There was a time in my life during college where I didn't know who I was anymore. And I don't know if that really makes sense to other people. I suspect that we all have times like this in our lives, but we don't really like to talk about it for whatever reason. I mean, I knew who I was. I could look in the mirror, and it was my face looking back at me. It just seemed like I didn't recognize it anymore. And I'd actually spend time looking into my own eyes in the mirror, questioning myself over and over again. Who are you? I don't really know what I was looking for or what kind of answer I was expecting to that question, but I asked it over and over again, day after day, for a long time. And I think I was looking for someone I liked. I think I was trying to remember what it was like to be a boy again. You know, to go back to a time where I didn't feel like I was suffering so much, a time where I didn't feel empty, a time where I knew who I was and I liked what it was I was doing. And I don't mean doing as in being a student. I meant doing as in being a person of integrity, of being helpful to other people, of being a good person. Because I wanted to be a good person. Some people thought that I was a good person. But when I looked into the mirror, I saw who was looking back. I saw deeply into those eyes, and I knew the inner thoughts and inner motives and inner actions that I kept secret from other people so that they would believe that Quincy Worthington was a good person. But I knew, and that stranger in the mirror knew, that Quincy Worthington was a sick person. That Quincy Worthington rarely, if ever, practiced what he preached. That Quincy Worthington would use you and cast you aside and make it seem like he did you a favor by doing it. And I, more than anybody else, hated Quincy Worthington for doing it. I spent a lot of time, day after day, looking at that person in the mirror, asking, who are you? Why are you doing this? And when I didn't get an answer, I told that stranger I hated him. Now, I'm sure that I've been in worse situations, and I'm sure there are probably times in my life where I felt worse, but nothing this pervasive or this constant. I had this constant feeling that I was nothing but a waste. I was empty. And I had no idea who I really was. But then something happened. One day, after looking into that mirror with disgust, I walked away, and all I wanted to feel was just utterly alone. There had been times in my life where I felt utterly alone in this world, but this was the first time that I ever wanted to feel that way. I deserved it. I deserved to feel utterly alone and God forsaken. And so as I locked myself in my room and I laid myself down on my bed, I couldn't shake this feeling then that I wasn't alone. I couldn't shake this feeling that there was something there with me that loved me terribly, and I didn't want to accept it, and I didn't want to feel it, but yet there it was, and no matter what I did, that feeling just wouldn't go away. And to be honest with you, I don't know what happened after that, really. I'd like to tell you that I ended up getting out of my bed, and my depression and anxieties stayed in it, and I looked into that mirror with instant confidence and clarity and purpose in my life, and things were never the same. But I know that's not what happened. I don't really remember what happened. I wish I did. But I can tell you this, though. Something happened. And I don't know how, and I don't know why, and the timeline is a little bit fuzzy, but the weeks and the months and the years that followed that were absolutely different. My prayer life in college became really strong after that, stronger than it had ever been, stronger maybe than it even is today. And I found myself totally immersed and engrossed and maybe even a little obsessed with my studies in theology. And I did daily prayer and meditation and devotions with a religious fervor, I guess. And I would look into the mirror, though, and I would still have no idea who I was. But I didn't hate that person anymore. I just didn't know who he was. And I can tell you then that there were people in my life who stuck by me and loved me until I was able to love myself. And there were days when I didn't think I could carry on, and that emptiness and loneliness would creep back into my life. But these people were there to remind me that I wasn't alone and that I wasn't struggling alone. And there were moments then when I had to rely on God's grace and those people to carry me through, or I wouldn't have made it. And because of that, then, I can tell you that out of all the stuff that I've read, out of all the classes that I've taken in my academic career, out of all the sermons that I've heard, and maybe even out of all the sermons that I've preached, out of all the experiences, both blissfully positive and horribly negative in my life that I've had, out of all the times that I've read through and studied the scriptures, out of the entirety of my life, there's only one thing that I know for absolute certain. And that's this: that God is love. And when I was at my absolute worst, and all bets were off, and I couldn't even love or know myself, God's love was there. Even in those moments, God is love. And God's love sometimes is experienced most directly through the love of other people. I'm telling you all of this for a really important reason. And if you don't listen to anything else that I ever say, I need you to know this: that if you've ever felt like, or if you're feeling now like I did, like you're empty, or like there's a hole inside of you, or like you don't know who you are anymore and you feel lost, please know that you are not alone. You are never alone. You see, right now, you're in a room full of people who love you and care about you, and they will do anything they can to help you. And you aren't the only person that's felt that way. There are those of us who felt that way too. And we've made it then to the other side. And as hopeless and as scary and as lonely and as hurtful as this world can sometimes be, you aren't alone. You're never alone. And we're here to love you and to lift you up and to care about you until you can love yourself. Don't you think for 1 minute that you're alone or that you're hopeless. Because you're not. You're worth fighting for. And I'm here with all these people and with God to fight for you and to fight with you. Listen, there's only really one reason why I'm able to stand up here today and say these things. And that's because people fought for me. That's because people proved to me that I wasn't alone. That's because people proved to me that God exists and God is working in this world. And if you ever need proof that God exists, then look at the person next to you, because that's all the proof you need. Sitting next to you is God working in this world. Sitting next to you is Christ resurrected and living among us. God acts in this world through us. And it's not something that we can do alone. God acts in this world through us. That's what a church is. It isn't a building or a room. It isn't something that we go to or we attend, but church is something that we are. Church is something that we do. Church is something that we constantly are becoming. Church is the community that we build here, knowing that regardless of faults and flaws and problems and wounds and scars and histories and addictions, church is a community that we build and love with one another. Knowing then that God blesses us and moves through us to care for each other and to care for all of God's creation. And when you're a part of this family then that we call church, you're never alone, and there's always hope. You don't have to go through this life alone, because you're never alone. You know, Moses is considered one of the, if not the greatest prophet of all time. They say that nobody talked as frequently or as intimately with God except for maybe Jesus, but Jesus is so much more than a prophet. But even Moses needed people to lift him up and carry him from time to time. In this reading from Exodus, we've seen God do all these amazing things through Moses. By this point where our reading takes place, Moses has brought them out of Pharaoh's grasp and through the Red Sea. And when they were starving and dying of thirst, God, through Moses, brought water out of stone. But now we find the Hebrews in the precarious situation where they are constantly being attacked as they're struggling to get to the promised land. Armies keep surrounding them and attacking them. And yet we're told then that whenever Moses lifts up his arms, they begin to win these battles. Yet there's a very human problem standing in their way of victory. Moses' arms are getting tired. Moses is running out. Moses is getting to empty. And if those arms go down, the army comes in and crushes the Hebrew people and crushes all the hopes and dreams of a promised land. The greatest prophet the world has ever seen, and his arms are getting tired. Now Aaron and Hur are up there with him, and they see what's happening. So they grab a stone and they build him a seat, and they sit Moses down. And just as Moses' arms are getting too tired, and he didn't think he could carry on anymore, they grabbed his arms and they lift him up. He couldn't do it alone. And he didn't have to. He had people with him who would carry the burden for him when he couldn't carry it himself any longer. And if Moses, the greatest prophet of all time, needed someone to carry his burdens from time to time, why do we think then that we would be any different? I mean, as we walk through this thing, as I think through this thing that we call church and wonder what exactly it is, and as we struggle then to figure out what it means to be a church and to do church in the 21st century, I think it all really just boils down to the story here about Moses. That the church, amid all other things it is and can be for better or worse, at its very core, the church isn't a place, and it isn't programs, and it isn't based on the type of worship that happens there. But really, what church is then is a people who are willing to recognize that God is still working in this world. That church is a community founded in God's love through Jesus Christ that realizes God still works in this world through other people. And because of that, then, we lift up those whose burdens are too heavy to carry. And we love those who cannot love themselves. And we carry those who think that they can't go on anymore. And we open their eyes to see God. And sometimes I wonder if everything else then isn't just a distraction. Victories in this life are not won alone. Battles of addiction or depression or loneliness or heartache aren't fought in solitude. And you don't have to carry your burdens alone. Because when your arms are too tired to lift, and you think that the armies are crushing in around you, and when you're grasping for that last little bit of energy or hope or life left in you to keep going, your God is still there. And we, as your church family, are here to lift your arms for you. You are never alone. And so may you realize that no matter what you're feeling, we're here to feel it with you. May you know that when your arms start to fail, that we'll lift them for you. And may you know that when you struggle, we're here to struggle with you. And may you know that you're never alone. You're never alone. Because God is with you. I am with you. And your church is with you. No matter what, we're with you. Amen.